Let's talk about things. What's on your mind? What's on your heart? What's in your spirit? What's, you know?
You know, it's weird being in a different place. It kind of makes you reflect on who you are, your upbringing, and what caused those types of what caused you to have that kind of upbringing, actually. You know, so this is kind of funny, but it's weird, and it just caused me to have a long reflection on why we as a people, Black Americans, why we do what we do. So the question, or the children, raising children, the upbringing is a lot different here.
So you're saying how children are raised in Africa is different from how children are raised among Black people in America.
Right.
Okay.
Remember, before we were leaving, we would tell the girls, because, you know, they got spicy mouths. We'd be like, when we get over to Africa, those mamas over there, they gonna tag y'all up. They ain't gonna tolerate that, hearing this. And, you know, we would say all these good things that we thought was gonna happen. But when we came over to the continent, you know, East Africa, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya, we see what we would normally say, automatically we'd be like, those are Mzungu children. Right. In the States, we'd be like, only Mzungu children act like that. But it's different here. And for instance, we were on a train, and the train had a little, there was a family, and they were all grown-ups, but there was one baby.
You're talking about
the train from Mombasa to Kenya.
Okay, all right, yeah.
There was one baby, and the baby had these cool little shoes on, the lights flash, but it also had happy noise, clickety clackety, beep 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 beep, every time he took a step.
I remember.
And we're taking the late train. And this is the train that you arrive at 3 a.m.
I was there.
I'm explaining to our audience people. You arrive at 3 a.m. So everyone else is kind of quieting down. But the child, the baby, the 3-year-old, 2 to 3-year-old at the most, is beep, 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 running up and down the train thing. Now, as Black Americans, we would have quickly snatched the baby up, sit your behind down, people trying to sleep, take these shoes off. Take these shoes off. That's the first moment I felt that I was old. I could not tell. This noise was killing me. And as I kept looking back, I'm trying to find out which one is the mama. None of them paying this child no mind. And then when they did catch eye with me, they smiled. And I'm like,
well, who? The child?
The whole family. I'm like, did y'all smile? Okay. So those that can sleep fell out. Those that cannot were just tortured. And I also remember when we first came, and I have other stories with Rwanda children too. You could be in a restaurant in Rwanda or at the Kigali Heights, and the children are flying pew, 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 all over the food court, like running, jumping, tackling, falling out. Tantrums will fall out, kicking and I'm like, what? What is this? And so lately I've been thinking, to see this so much, a different aspect. When we were when we first came and we were at the pool, and there was some Black children there, Kenyan children there. They had the Mzungu grandfather. It's easier to say Mzungu than them flagging us saying the other words, Caucasian or white.
Why would they flag us?
I don't know. We never know
thought,
until they do.
It's okay. They're white people. White people, Caucasians,
I like
Europeans,
Mzungu. Speak the language of the people. But
people.
as and the child kept taking his pants off. Is a little boy, he's about 3 or 4 years old, just kept taking his swim trunks off. He took his swim trunks off. So there's a pool full of little girls, little children, and that was fine for them, and the grandparent was actually, he was the step grandparent, obviously, or maybe not. Maybe that was I don't remember, but there was other children there that were Kenyan children, and then you had the mixed babies. But this child kept taking his clothes off, booty naked, in a pool full of little girls and boys, just children, period. And it bothered me to the core. And I had to finally ask him, why are you allowing him to do that in front of these girls? Or period. I asked the grandfather.
Okay.
And even he said, I don't like it either, but the mother was the Kenyan lady. The grandfather was from Germany or Sweden or something, I can't remember. It bothered him. And I was like, what? Totally threw off at this point, like, what? He says, the mama lets him do it, and I keep telling him to put his clothes on, the mama says let him take it off. But the pool was full of other little children, and this little boy is just hanging, swinging, booty naked. And so it was baffling to me. So the whole time over here, the one thing that I have a hard time understanding is the culture of raising the child. And so I started thinking, maybe we're crazy. Maybe because we were forced. And the way that I'm looking at it now, matter of fact, you were saying it yesterday while we were hiking. And
well, so what I'm understanding is that you're seeing some cultural differences, which comes kind of as a surprise, because we, as you were beginning to mention, or you briefly stated, as Black Americans, a lot of especially from our generation going back, this generation going forward is a little different, but our generation going back, a lot of our upbringing, at least I thought, and I'm sure you thought too, had some ties into African culture.
Yeah, we thought it was cultural.
As how parents raised the child, how the community or / village raised the children, where even though the child may not be directly from your family, but if you were in the wrong,
right, the whole village would take.
Right. So so this is what I'm hearing, is that there's the cultural difference that comes as a shock and kind of a bit of a surprise. And as I think about it, it makes me wonder too, because specifically when we're dealing with the examples that you gave, children acting out or misbehaving in
our
public,
eyes,
in our eyes,
we look at it as that child is
undisciplined,
right,
acting a bit uncivilized in public or in a public space.
Right.
So for us, it's like, okay, no, this is for us. We don't do that. The moms gave us, dads gave us the lecture before we walked into a public space, saying, listen, all right, don't embarrass me, don't act up, don't ask for nothing, don't touch it, all of that, that whole lecture. And we're thinking that, but when you look further into it and you do the comparison, and you come to find out that, or at least in our experience, that it ain't quite, the connection is not quite the same or there.
It's totally different.
So it makes you think, for us in our collective experience as Black people in America, being brought over, does it have some connection and tie into having to be a certain way among white people, Caucasians, Mzungu, whatever, and it kind of like became something that just was
the fear of not being your best in front of Caucasians. Don't act a fool in here and embarrass me in front of these good old white folks. You know, that whole fear factor, but also with the level of restraint that we had to put on ourselves, on our children. We noticed it just yesterday. We went hiking, as you guys probably have already seen, and we've already between the sun and the natural greenery and the butterflies, and it just makes you feel free and happy and exciting. And so I'm doing my monkey calls, and as we're walking, my granddaughter's like, Jada, stop it. because she see a family of Caucasians walking through, and you asked her, well, you didn't say y'all to stop before.
When there was some other,
right,
regular locals or blacks that came through, but why? And it wasn't to condemn her, but it was just something that triggered
That's what triggered the thought that stayed all day, and it was like, did we teach this to her? Did we force and impose? You got to act right so that they look at you right.
But we did.
Like, we never did that.
We never did that.
If anything, we always the opposite. But for some reason, it's in her mind. It could be through DNA or social media that you got to act right in front of these Mzungos. And I'm like, no, ma'am. I'm going to be me regardless. But we were taught that. It's not something that's a natural instinct. Obviously, if we're in another country and children are just free to just be. Imagine we were at a cafe the other day, and there was a little child, 3 years old, and there was a structure because they were planting new trees. So they're baby trees, and this child was climbing all in the structure, all over the baby tree, and I just knew any moment, this child's mama, there's 5 ladies sitting on the bench. I didn't.
One of them was going.
One of them had to be the mama, but none of them says nothing. And I'm like, why are y'all letting this child destroy this piece right here? And they're just laughing, having a good time. And these aren't young mamas. See, in the States, we'll be like, these young moms don't know how to raise their children. These were not young mamas. These were mamas. And no one tells the child, get down or stop. And the child just running free and running around, doing her own little thing. And I never even really seen them even glance at the child. Because I'm watching like, how come they allowed this child to do this? And it's so mind-blowing because we can't understand that.
It's hard. It's challenging because it's a thin line, I believe. Like, so on one hand, it's like you don't want to inhibit the natural expression of children. You don't want to stifle them. You don't want them to think that they can't be themselves or be who they are. However, on the other hand, it's one of those things where, okay, you have to know when and where. Like, if you're in public and you're in a public space that is a shared space, right, then you have individuals who are looking to have a certain type of experience. And so there's a certain level of mindfulness that has to be present. And you have to know that, okay, even though for me, I'm cool, but how may it affect other persons or people around?
This is how we are taught to think. Like, we can't just worry about this right here situation. This is our whole surroundings. Right. And you need to, and that's how we're taught at home. Right? We would tell you need to have some home training. You need to act like you have some
my mom say, act like you got some civilization. That's what she always say.
Like, these things are forced on us. So it's like,
but is it forced?
I mean, imagine we were watching The Color Purple finally the other day, and in The Color Purple, I feel like thinking of her name. She has the 2 children, and the children are well behaved.
Celie.
No, it wasn't Celie. You told
Sophia.
And so she's at the store. The children are well behaved, and the white lady says, "Oh, your children are so clean and they're so well behaved. You must come work for me." And she's like, "No, I'm okay." And she's like, "What? How dare you? I said you must come work for me." So it's like, in that instance, it made me think of how we shrink. We shrink ourselves for them not to focus on us. We shrink ourselves for don't look at our children, don't look at our sons, don't look at our daughters. Like, it's so embedded in the terror that we've been through. It's like it just kept festering in my spirit. Like, why do we make our children be quiet? Because we don't want them to draw attention to them. We don't want you looking at our children.
But it's
a fear.
I think it stems from.
It stems, like, imagine on the plantation, and you got little boys, and they're super strong, and they're playing and they're wrestling, And then the plantation manager say, "Oh, that boy's strong. Oh,
But-
he gonna make me a lot of money."
But
Or the
even-
little girl is very pretty or artistic. Oh, she. So it's like we started to shrink.
Right, but even further than that, you know, understanding when we just say we look at, let's look at Willie Lynch. Some people believe that is fictional, or some people believe that is actually something that was a plan and that was implemented in the time of our enslavement. And one of the things that was done, for those of us that know, was that to instill the fear into all of the slaves. They would take the biggest, what they would call buck, the biggest and strongest of the, and they tar feathered him, and they would do all of these different things, and they did certain things, to not go into the horrors of it, but to do certain things to women, and call all of the plantation slave, you know, those who were enslaved on the plantation, to come be a witness of it. And automatically, as a mother with a son, of course, naturally it's like, okay, bring you close, and then from that point teach them, listen, make sure you're mindful of what you do in front of, or in the space of, or in the sight of massa or white folks, and so forth and so on, so that you don't become an example like that one was an example. So I do think that it touches on that. It does touch on that, and that is a passing down, and it was a survival for us, and it's still a survival for us, because now you fast forward,
Because you have to
think about it. If I'm now in the 21st century, I still got to have that type of conversation. Okay, son, when you get in the car and you driving,
or you walking down the street with
you
your
walking down the
boys,
street,
better act a certain way, because you don't want Mr. Popo pulling
exactly.
them up. You better don't put your hoodie on.
Exactly.
Don't be out there with your earbuds on and not paying attention. Don't walk certain. It's crazy that this is a form of terrorism.
I mean, of course, it's a domestic terrorism. It's mental. Of course it is. I mean, the most,
So we're over here and we're looking at other children with the ability to just
be free.
And that initially, because, we're still, what's it called?
Condition.
Cleaning our minds, not whitewashing, but
just unlearning.
We're trying. We're looking at it like, man, why are their children so undisciplined? But we also know when they're a certain age, they're very respectful to their parents.
That's the other side.
They're very respectful to authority. They're very elders. They're very well mannered. They're and so we're like something.
So it's
almost heartbreaking, because it's like trying to figure out. For me now, I'm my emotions and my upbringing feel displaced, because we did the best that we could with what we knew, what our parents knew, and what their parents had to do.
It was necessary. I think a lot of it has, when you speak in terms of space and environment on a grand scale, when you shrink it down to, okay, a public place, a restaurant, or
yeah, I mean, it makes sense. You should have a certain level of discipline.
Right. However, when you're speaking about on a broader scale, as far as environment is concerned, so the environment in the American society is there's a color consciousness that precedes culture. Whereas in the more in the African society, or I'll just say the African society, it's more of a cultural experience. They don't have the color consciousness that we've had, that's been imposed upon us, and so there was no interruption or interference. So the thought of certain things doesn't even occur to them.
Right.
It doesn't even. So again, going back to, as from our generation moving backwards, we share kind of that same thing. Like we dare not talk back to an elder. We dare not, be disrespectful to a teacher or someone of that high regard, as is in the American cultural society. I mean, the African cultural society, and the damaging is still in place. It has never ceased. It is continuing, and so we've continuously had to try to adapt to the continuing damaging effects that's placed upon us as black people in America. So when we do come here, it's like
we're confused. Like,
it's
everybody got baby kids. Like, what is going on?
It's like, and first thing that come to my mind is shit yo.
Yeah, I be telling her,
like, hold on.
beat them. I remember we asked our niece, our Rhonda niece. I said, did you get beaten when you were growing up? She said, why?
She was like, what? What
do you mean? What do you mean? I was like, y'all didn't get beaten. So even stuff that we were taught about Africa and how they raised their children and so forth, that was all folklore. But that's what it felt like. But it's folklore.
It makes you. But even that makes you think. Of course, even again on the plantation, when any of us as black folk who were enslaved got out of line, you got on that whipping post, and you were whipped to put you back in line. So if what we're experiencing here is not what we thought was a part of our culture or cultural identity, ancestrally speaking, did we learn this behavior even to that from Mzungus, from white folk?
Yeah.
It makes you think about that.
And the crazy thing is, that's not how they raise their children.
No, it doesn't seem that way.
That's how they raise their property, their booty, their servants. So continuously, generations and generations and generations, we raise our children still like servants. Like, you better do well so master don't get you, don't treat you wrong, so that make yourself almost invisible, so you don't stand out and they don't look them in the eye. Right? It's not our generation, but that's was taught to our parents. Don't look them in the eye.
Reckless eyeballing. This whole Jim Crow, all that Jim Crow.
But then you watch their children, and you would compare it to almost animalistic. The little boy that was out there climbing on top of the swings and the fixtures. I mean, on the top. No one says anything, and I'm looking like, why? Why are you here? But why? Why? So, in this transitioning, especially people with children, one thing you can look forward to. Now I could say it's looking forward to. Where when we first came, it was, it was a totally different mindset for me. But now I can say you can look forward to your children having the freedom to be children.
No, that's true. But let's put it in perspective, though. When I say put it in perspective, is that they are children. And boundaries, so this is where a thin line comes in.
But just because we see children be children don't mean that their families haven't set boundaries.
No, I'm not saying that.
I think it just means they don't have the restrictions of not being able, even you struggle with, and we'll say, why we have to be in the library. Hearing a child laughing pretty loud or having fun, or we keep it contained that everything has a place and a purpose. No, they're like, that's what children do all day. Just let them do it.
Again, you have to consider the setting. You have to consider who's sharing that space. You have to consider a lot of different things. That's why I say there has to be boundaries. You have to have a certain. And what it does in the rearing and raising of the children of the child, you help that child understand that, okay, there are certain conduct that is acceptable and there's certain conduct that is unacceptable socially. That you have to know the difference between the 2, 3, 4, or 5, right? So that, and this goes with just discipline. You hear the child now? It was discipline. So there's a thin line with these things here, So climbing, the scriptures, the Bible says, spare the rod, you spoil the child, right? That doesn't necessarily mean there have to be a physical rod, but there has to be some imposition that when the child is going left, you gotta put them back
But the thing
in the
is,
straight way. So,
but it doesn't mean that they're going left.
no. I mean,
Now, I haven't witnessed a child get hurt. I have witnessed some crazy tantrums and the parent just saying, oh, and I'm like confused, like, and the clicks in my mind is, you better pop that butt.
I'm still like, listen,
beat him. But it's confusing because this is what was done to us. So this is all we know.
I don't know. I mean,
they know a different way.
I still believe.
That's because we are a different people. We come from something different.
I still believe that, child, if you are the functionality of things, if you are mishandling, if you climbing on top of stuff, that ain't what that's for.
Right.
You're not supposed to do that.
I
so
feel like
get
the parents
down.
should be very active, especially when you have your child out. You need to make sure that they are being respectful of people, things,
property,
there's space.
Stuff there.
So even when
freedom
we were
or no freedom has responsibility.
When we were at a restaurant one time, I think this was in Rwanda, this child was just going berserk. Remember, he thought you was his dad or grandpa or something.
He came up to me. I'm like, "What's up, man?"
He was going berserk, and I was like, "This child is making my food nasty," because he was just too much. I mean, I couldn't get it. I couldn't do it, and I was so confused. Sweet, and the parents thought it was just hilarious, especially when he came over and thought you was his pop or dad or something. He said, "You look just like his whatever it was," and you did, but It's mind blowing, but it's a cultural challenge that could be a beautiful learning tool, because initially we thought it was just all wrong, it's disturbing, it's not right.
It's still disturbing.
We're still adjusting. But for parents that are trying to come over and they're trying to see where would be a good place for their children, if you want your child to have more of that free-spirited type of situation that's more nurtured, I mean, Kenya, especially Kenya, is all about families. It's all about families. Everywhere you go, they make sure that the family has the resource, the family is celebrated. So, and there's no shortage of that. It's mind-blowing. And there's no shortage of it. Everywhere, every place, to be a shop, supermarket, a restaurant, a mall, anything. They're going to have a spot for the children, for the families. So that part, you can definitely rest assured that you're going to have a great time raising children here. They're not restricted to fear. They're not restricted to having a certain kind of discipline to be invisible to certain people. And then you're taught as you get older, you got to have another certain kind of discipline so that you can be seen by those same people that we were trying to keep our children invisible from. Because now, in order to make power moves, you need to be seen. They need to see you. They need to see your strengths. They need to see all those things. But in order to protect them from these predators beforehand, you got to be invisible. That's a lot on a person. That's a lot trying to figure out how to maneuver.
Well, this is it's very interesting. It's quite enlightening, in the observation and the witnessing of these things here. And I guess for me, it allows me to have a certain level of tolerance. I don't know that I'm fully accepting of certain instances as it relates to this, freeness when it comes to children in certain settings, but it does give me a certain level of tolerance. It allows me to put myself in check and not to judge, in understanding that, okay, these are cultural differences based on different environments, and for us, needing to survive, and it worked for us and it's working for us to a degree, and then vice versa. So, but these are necessary, observations, and things that need to be, discussed and talked about in order for we, as Blacks from America of the diaspora, coming in contact with this particular culture that we're now, living in, embarking on, so that we don't become offensive and become,
don't come
judging.
over here trying to snatch at people's babies.
Right. So we can be like, okay,
telling them, where's your mama? That's me. I'm over here. I'm like, child, where's your mama? What's going on? It's confusing. But it's a beautiful awakening.
Yes, it is. It really is. It really is.
It helps to shed a lot of the trauma that came over with us through, and then we didn't even realize it. It helps to shed light on a lot of those type of situations.
It's that self-discovery. It just keeps getting deeper and deeper. We begin to really now, discover certain things of us, not just individually, but just as a collective of people, Black people in our experience, and connecting the dots. Like, so Mama said this, but wait. You mean to tell me this is not connected to our African origin? Possibly.
There's somewhere that
it could be a reactionary. So, all right. Well, this is a good conversation. I'm glad, that was put on your spirit and in your heart and on your mind, because it definitely is enlightening and very insightful. So, thank you for that. As always, we appreciate you for allowing us to be able to share some of our intimate thoughts and feelings as we embark on this continuing experience living here on the continent, specifically now right here in Kenya, Nairobi, Kenya. So please, if you like what it is that you have heard and what we're sharing, please hit the like button, even share it. And if you're first time actually tuning in to The Residential Tourist, we love to have you as a subscriber. So please hit that subscribe button. Peace and blessings.